So first and foremost, I want to welcome everybody. We're really, really excited to have this group together and looking forward to this conversation with Pooja and Andy to talk about emerging leader programs. One of the most popular topics we hear from learning and development leaders. Um, some of you may have connected with us recently at L10. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for sharing some questions in advance that we have. We've built today's discussion around those themes, as well as some of the common questions we've heard both at L10 and from some of our other clients as well. Of course, we're also going to be weaving in the opportunity for you to ask questions throughout this conversation and dialogue. Today's session is interactive. Please feel free to put questions that you have in the chat as we go along. I'm going to look through those and try to weave those questions into the conversation as well. So just to get started here, a couple of introductions. My name is Zach Spillner. I am Vaya's relationship manager, guiding client partnerships, and I'm going to be moderating today's session. The two experts I have with me, Andy Day from Vaya Group is our managing consultant specializing in program design and facilitation. Our managing consultant who has a deep expertise specifically in emerging leader and hypo development, and then Pooja, who is our senior consultant specializing in program design and facilitation. So thank you, Andy and Pooja, for taking the time. At Vaya, we partner with L&D leaders by adding value to emerging leader programs, high potential programs, and other leadership development programs. We focus on combining assessment, development, and coaching that drives measurable results. So just a bit on us as a background. I do want to kick things off with just kind of a big, broad question. I'm going to pose this to Andy. When we talk about emerging leader programs, why do organizations invest here, and what sort of impact do they see from those programs?
Well, thanks, Zach. Maybe the most obvious answer is to prepare people to take that step to be a manager and a leader in an organization. So that journey from being an individual contributor to a first time working through other people is huge for those individuals going through that experience. So it takes an entirely different skill set to being responsible for how do I perform to how do I get other people to perform. And so setting them up for success is probably one of the big key reasons people engage in that. The other reason is, emerging leaders are often looking at high potential people who are individual contributors. It's another way to keep them engaged into the organization. There's a lot of research which supports that people who are developed are more engaged. They're willing to put forward even more effort and stay with the organizations that they're in. So it's a great way to reinvest in the people that are providing great contributions to your business in the first place.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, I think, when we talk about retention and we talk about different ways to engage and focus on employee engagement, this can be a critical opportunity as well. I want to also, again, just kind of reemphasize, we're going to cover some popular questions and popular topics we hear from some of our clients, and we would love to hear from the audience. So if there are questions that you have, challenges that your organization's thinking about, feel free to drop those in the chat so we can also address those live. If we do get more questions than we have time for here, we can kind of do some extended overtime work, maybe in another session, and or maybe do some, so I can coordinate some outreach so we can address some questions individually as well. I want to get things started. Pooja, I want to kind of kick this to you. When we talk about emerging leader programs, one of the challenges that a lot of our clients often talk about is how to keep things fresh and how to continue to innovate in programs so they don't feel stale year after year. Can you talk about maybe some recommendations or suggestions or what you've seen when it comes to how to keep things engaging?
Absolutely, and there's a lot that we can do in this space. So firstly, thanks for that great question. I think one of the key aspects to keep leadership programs from feeling stale is really to kind of treating them as living, evolving experiences rather than just, static offerings. So One of the first aspects that we can start by doing is really staying very close to the business. Every year, priorities shift, whether it is, a new strategic direction, a cultural emphasis, or even maybe external market changes. So, a refreshing program, refreshing content, and scenarios which are as close to the business as possible, where leaders feel that they are really resolving today's challenges but not yesterday's, is one of the aspects one can do to be able to refresh, keep the program refreshing. The other aspect is looking at how the program is delivered. There are so many different formats that one could use to be able to keep the program very engaging. There is a mix of simulations, there could be peer coaching, and sometimes what we also call as reverse mentoring, to give participants a chance to learn from each other. So, really using newer modalities. And lastly, we could also use newer voices, make sure newer perspectives are added. So, you could have external speakers, you could have stakeholders from the organization whose voices leaders would love to hear. So, really giving them an opportunity to giving a top down approach in terms of why the program is important. How could you be that emerging leader that others would want to follow? So these are typically some of the things that could be used to keep the program engaging, refreshing, and having participants looking forward to more.
That's really helpful. Andy, in terms of clients that are attempting to continue to innovate and trying to innovate, have you seen challenges? Have you seen groups run into major hurdles and obstacles, or any sort of common themes across innovation challenges? What do organizations seem to be running into?
It's trying to figure out how or what to innovate. So, there's a little bit of the, oh, we need to freshen this up, but where do we start? And so, as Pooja rightly said, you're keeping it tied to what the business objectives are and the talent strategy of the organization is one of the keys to success there. Another thing is like innovation for innovation's sake. So it's just, hey, we have to make a change. It's like really questioning, do you? And what does that look like? And what sort of investment is that? And then overcomplicating it. So innovation can be small changes that really add some real impact and value to what you're already doing. So if you have a small program, expanding it slightly by adding some new features or some new assessment experiences or some new programming. But keeping those things in mind to have some good continuity also year over year. One of the values of having a program like this that you run on a consistent basis is you can track some of the changes and make some comparisons of the growth of emerging leaders in your organization. If you try to change too dramatically, it's really easy to kind of lose sight of the bigger picture too.
Small changes, keeping things simple rather than going for big change and big dramatic shifts. And you talk about measurement and you talk about being able to show impact. It's a really good transition into the next topic, because I wanted to ask you, Andy. I think one of the things that L&D leaders talk to us about often is the need to be able to show impact to senior executives and senior leaders within the organization around what's happening in these programs. So how do you show impact and track behavior change beyond just participant feedback? What are some of your recommendations?
Some very straightforward ways are just to look at what does that behavioral change look like over time. So measuring a baseline of where they're at when they start, and then getting another clear objective measurement of what their capabilities are once they finish the program gives you a nice time one, time two measurements. You can compare and see some actual changes in the growth, that delta between where they started and where they ended up as far as key leadership capabilities. The other thing is to not underestimate stakeholder feedback. So by engaging with leaders in the business who care and like saying, what have you seen come out of the people who've gone through the program, and getting their input and capturing that becomes a really key way to have, say, we've seen and can actually witness changes in these people and their effectiveness as to these areas that they've had to grow in. And then longer term, you can think bigger picture. You don't have to just oh, has this person changed? But what are some of the things the business actually cares about? Or like we said at the beginning, are those people more likely to stay with the organization? When we've worked with other clients, they tend to find that people who go through these programs tend to stay and have good retention compared to other parts of the business. Do they get more promotions, whether it's necessarily a direct promotion into a management role or another type of career change that helps elevate where they're at in the business? Those sorts of promotions and tracking that information is really helpful to show, hey, we've invested in these people and they're showing up in a way that matters back to the organization.
Yeah, and to add to that, even communicating about success stories, what have participants learned? How has that helped? How has that helped advance the business? I think the more we talk about success stories, the more it gets ingrained that these programs are really helpful to be able to get that broader leadership lens that emerging leaders need.
It's really interesting that you bring that up, Pooja. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, and we actually have a question
Mhm.
here in the chat about this, is when we talk about communication, I think one of the things that I think about, and we've discussed before, that's really important is the involvement of emerging leader managers,
Absolutely.
and communication and support. So this kind of leads to the question that was asked here in the chat, and one of the things I was going to ask you about, how do we look to involve managers in a way that reinforces the program without maybe being overburdensome or overwhelming?
Mhm. Yeah, and as I said earlier as well, a top-down approach is kind of always helpful. Involving managers early in terms of setting expectations about how participants would balance responsibilities, and where they learn, and what team coverage is required. Sometimes that's really helpful to be able to give or set expectations that participants can manage both the program as well as their day-to-day responsibilities as well. Apart from that, the involvement of managers is also helpful so that they can share their own stories in terms of what has been their journey like, what does it look like, and getting them to share with their direct reports or people who are getting engaged in the program is also a really good way of connecting or getting that alignment between managers and participants in the program. Apart from that, orientations for them, because sometimes as managers, there is an intention of getting their people to develop. But what does it look like? What are their responsibilities? If there is an IDP that the organization has, how can the managers get involved in getting that set up for their people? So regular connects is also something that is helpful. And just a guidance even for managers in terms of, okay, these are some of the ways that you could stay involved in the development of your people, is something that we could all use to be able to tell managers responsibilities and initiative.
We got an interesting question from the chat, and I'd be curious if either of you have any perspective on this in terms of what you're seeing, maybe by industry, or I don't know if we necessarily want to call it any specific organizations, but have you seen any groups or trends around maybe organizations or types or industries where this sort of innovation and communication and top-down approaches has really taken hold? Are there types of organizations or maybe leadership models or anything where you've seen this has been more successful, or what sort of buy-in do you typically see that has made this more successful?
Yeah, there have been, we spoke about flexible and modular content, right? So organizations are typically using a lot of AI avatars as well to be able to give people the platform for even coaching so that it is at on their fingertips, right? So that is something that they are being able to use, they are being able to leverage, and at the same time they are being provided feedback by real-time observers who could be their real life mentors or coaches. So that looks like a very good combination of people to practice as well as receive feedback from their mentors. And anything that you have noticed in terms of trends?
Yeah, I would say types of organizations, broadly speaking, there's a couple things. One is companies that have a large uh, employee population that will transition into leadership roles at some point. So those sorts of organizations tend to be able to support these sorts of programs because they have the infrastructure that allows for it, and they have the need in order to find out of all these people who work at our individual level who has the interest in being a leader and who can have the skills, and how can we help grow them in order to take that on. Classically, the pharmaceutical life science space, the insurance industry space has really embraced this sort of approach and this model to help these emerging leaders grow through these sorts of programs. The other thing that's often key is as you push development down organizations, we often see development is kind of stuck at the top of the leadership chain. But organizations who really invest down just have that natural cultural development that they've cultivated over the years. So having strong leadership that really believes in the growth of the people within their business really helps support that overall process. It kind of goes back to what Pooja was saying about managers and understanding that their buy-in and their investment in wanting to develop their people comes from the top of the business on down, and that really helps people to be successful in growing. And there's lots of direct impact from doing that as well, from not only preparing them to be managers, but influencing. These are skills that can translate to the job today. They become just better performers because they're thinking more broadly about the business, more actively. They're influencing more people as they practice these leadership skills.
I want to go back. Actually, this is a great question in the chat, and I don't think in 2025 we can do a web-based conversation or a change-based, really any conversation without involving a conversation around AI and technology.
Yeah.
So Pooja, I want to take this back to you because I think this talks to what you were speaking about when we were talking about innovating. Since AI and technology is here to stay, what are you seeing that AI is helping with emerging leader or high potential programs? What's trending? What are your recommendations, and what other ways should people look to use AI and new technologies?
One of the aspects that I just brought about was, of course, the AI augmented coaching and feedback. So there's been like a growing use of, AI tools to be able to augment human coaching. There is generative AI for content creation. So you have learning exercises, you have simulations. The other ways in which AI is being used is also to identify who the hidden high potentials are by sometimes even analyzing broader data sets. So you have 360 feedback, you have performance metrics, informal networks. So all of those could be used rather than just using the usual metrics. Apart from that, AI is also being used to really analyze individual learning gaps, preferences, past performance data. So there is a lot of traction to be able to use that AI content not only to have simulations which are custom to, which are tailored to the organization, but also organizations can use it to identify high potentials using all of this data as well.
It's really interesting. And Andy, I know when we were at L10 this summer, there was a lot of conversation around AI, and there are a lot of opportunities that it presents, but also I think you had taken away some thoughts, or you had some thoughts around maybe some of the pitfalls of leaning on AI, or not thinking about how you're using it properly. Do you want to maybe just share with the group maybe some of the things that we talked about in L10 and some of the thoughts you had there?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that AI is really powerful. It has a lot of promise, but it's still evolving, and it takes oversight. It's not perfect yet, right? So it still requires a lot of background check, involvement, testing. Is it doing what we intended to do? If you ask the AI to even write something for you, if you read it back, you're like, that's not quite what I intended. This is a simple example of if you're asking it to do more complex activities, you have to really put the human intervention on it still. It's not an automatic way, just like push a button and suddenly get
Yes.
a fully blown emerging leader program out of it. It's a tool. It's a very powerful tool, and I'm excited to see where it's going to evolve and what sort of cool things it's going to enable people to do. But that healthy dose of skepticism goes a long way in ensuring that you're using it properly and you're getting out of it exactly what you need to in order to be successful.
Yeah. And the other aspect to that I would also add is really having a balance between the human touch and AI, so that like I said, one could use the avatars to be able to practice their coaching, but to be able to give that real time feedback, to be able to inspire, to be able to have those real time conversations, I think there's always that human touch which is important. So what is the right balance is something that we all need to think about while deploying AI.
Love that. I have another topic here, something that came up as we were talking about earlier. I wanted to transition back to implementation and communication with managers and how these pieces come together. One of the questions we've been asked, Andy, in the past, I know at L10, how do we keep programs impactful while also minimizing disruptions to day-to-day responsibilities? How would you recommend groups prioritize development within individuals and how to involve their leaders and their managers in that development?
Yeah, well, I think the big thing that people often overlook is how much learning happens in practice and on the job. So you give them the training sessions, you give them the coaching, and they have to go out in the world and practice it. And that's where the bulk of what they're doing occurs. And so if you're doing it right, it's not really an extra homework assignment. It's not something additional that they have to do like at the end of the day or in between other stuff they're working on. It should be really incorporated into their day-to-day work. And how does it add actual value as opposed to detracting? If you start to shift your mindset about how are we developing our people, as opposed to, oh, it's this extra thing I have to do. It's another task that gets deprioritized. It's part of my job responsibility. I need to grow and be more effective at what I do. I need to learn how to improve my techniques and my skill sets. Why shouldn't I learn how to be a more effective leader and build my leadership competence? Why aren't I practicing these things on a day-to-day basis and finding opportunities that align with the stuff that I'm already doing to get better at this? It doesn't have to be this dramatic. All the time we run into emerging leaders who are, I struggle with giving tough feedback, but I really don't feel like I have the responsibility or the authority to do that. So they're reluctant to tell people that they're not doing something right. But at the end of the day, if they're high potential in an emerging leader program, who better to ask for feedback on how you're doing? And so you get an opportunity to just practice that naturally by working with your coworkers and saying like, hey, I'm working on giving feedback. Do you mind if we work together and you can tell me how I do at it?
Yeah.
Then it becomes a practice tool that you're using all the time and bettering the people around you as well as improving yourself. It's like a win-win. And so people shifting that perspective, it becomes really helpful. Managers then find it much more palatable as opposed to, oh, I have to take them off their daily tasks in order to do this other thing. No, it's part of what they're just doing.
Yes.
I would imagine too that in certain contexts that gives some ability for that existing manager to also delegate and or leverage their high potential team members to maybe help them move the team or help them move the organization forward. So it definitely can be helpful to everyone involved in the process. I wanted to ask this question that just came up in the chat. I know we're coming up on time here, but just briefly, I'll put you both on the spot. Pooja, if you want to start, what would you say is the most rewarding part of how you interface with emerging leader programs or emerging leaders?
I think for me, the most rewarding part is just, just seeing the enthusiasm of people who want to be that emerging leader. They want to be, they want to lead people. They want to be able to take people along with them. So that's one part of the conversation that I really enjoy. The other aspect is just sharing my own journey with them, because we've all been in a space where we've needed guidance. We've all been in a space where we wanted to step up, and what did I learn along the way? And that's something that I share with them. And I think just seeing them, take that, flourish, and move it forward, I think is the most rewarding for me.
Of that, Andy, anything you would add?
Yeah, it's as they're making this sort of decision, because it's a decision point for a lot of these people. They think they want to be a leader. They've been told by their manager, "Hey, you'd make a great leader." We just had this experience just last week where we conducted an emerging leader program with one of our clients, and one of the people said, "This experience really helped me cement and reinforce. This is what I'm going to do next." That see them have that light bulb moment of like, this is my next career step because I experience what this is like. I see more now what it's like to really be a manager is really cool. And then the other piece is again seeing that actual growth happen. Like when you see them get it and they practice it and they can talk about it in a way that like they hadn't before, as they've developed and they've gone through the training and they've implemented it, and they come back and they share that with you. That's why we do this. We want to make leaders better. I mean, that's what we say at Vaya, right? It's like we that's our role in this world, is like to really come out here and help people grow and learn and become more effective at being leaders of people, and the impact they have just spreads from there. So seeing that firsthand and getting to witness that is really one of the most exciting things I get to do, being a part of Emerging Leader Program.
Of that. Well, I want to thank you both for taking the time to share with us. A couple of things I just want to kind of hit home here as we're wrapping up, just some key takeaways and some key things to think about. One, evolve in terms of keeping things fresh, evolve learning formats, inject new voices, and leverage technology to keep things fresh. Two, follow through and invest in your approach to measurement, and that I think, as Andy talks about, is just do it. The famous Nike phrase is key. And then the third key takeaway I think we want to make sure we hit home on is find ways to make practice part of day-to-day business interactions and really allow people to practice what it is that they're learning, and that can be immensely helpful. So again, Andy and Pooja, I want to thank you both for taking the time, and I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. We are going to be sending a follow-up email with a recording of the session. I did also want to share our contact information here. If there are additional questions, if there are others that didn't get brought up in the chat, or things that you'd like to talk more about, or specific challenges you're having, please reach out to us. I will share this information when we send a follow-up email as well. So thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having us. It was great interacting with everyone, and yeah, have a great day ahead.
Thank you.